My job was to monitor metrics in a server farm, which meant long, silent nights in a brightly lit, windowless room called the Operations Center. The place was designed for efficiency, not comfort. The only constant presence was the ambient noise, the low, steady roar of the HVAC system, the repetitive, rhythmic clack, clack of a cooling fan rack 2 aisles over, and the high-pitched, almost musical whine of the power regulator. These sounds were the air I breathed. They were proof that systems were operational and reality was stable. One night, around 2 a.m., the HVAC hum broke. It wasn't a failure. It was a stutter. The steady, predictable humming dropped out for half a second, then immediately repeated the exact segment of sound it had just made. It was like a vinyl record skipping, playing the same half second of deep tone twice. Humming, humming, humming. I sat up, annoyed. I checked the environmental controls. Everything nominal. I focused on the sound, waiting for it to stabilize. It didn't. It began to get worse, catching itself in shorter, faster loops. H, M, H, N. Then the other noises began to follow suit. The cooling fan rack, which usually went clack, 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 suddenly went clack, 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 playing an extra phantom beat before resuming its rhythm. Then it started playing sounds in reverse. I heard the whoosh of an air vent, but the sound traveled into the vent, ending in a high-pitched suction noise. I pressed my hands against my ears, trying to isolate the sound, convinced it was a bad speaker or a deteriorating acoustic panel. But when I removed them, the world sounded wrong. The white noise was dissolving into fragments. It was separating itself, like oil and water. The predictable sounds were breaking down. In the sudden, agonizing gaps of silence, I began to hear new things. I heard the slow, measured swish of bare skin on linoleum, right behind my chair. I spun around, but the room was empty. I heard a sound like sand being poured onto glass, coming from inside the locked fire cabinet. I knew the cabinet contained nothing but blankets and first aid supplies. The worst was the whispering in the static. It was everywhere. 1,000 tiny voices layered just beneath the high-frequency whine of the regulator. They weren't speaking words I knew. They were simply talking, a dense, chaotic blanket of low-fidelity secrets. It was a sound that drove me mad. Not because it was loud, but because it felt like I was moments away from understanding what it all meant. I jumped up, intending to flee, but I was stopped by the realization of the problem. If the sounds were breaking down, that meant the silence was leaking in. Absolute silence is not empty. It is a profound pressure. I walked to the single server rack that seemed to be the loudest. I pressed my ear to the metal chassis, hoping the deafening internal hum would drown out the fragments. Instead, I heard a wet, deep thud inside the server case, followed by a sound like a small animal struggling on wet pavement. Then the sounds stopped, all of them. The HVAC system, the cooling rack, the regulator whine, the whispering static, it all vanished. The room was plunged into a silence so absolute it felt physical. My own breathing sounded like a cannon firing. The blood rushing in my ears was a high-speed river. I could hear my eyelids scrape against my eyeballs when I blinked, and in that profound, echoing void, I heard one new sound. It came from the far wall, a subtle, patient sucking sound, wet and constant, as if the room itself were taking a very slow, very deep breath. It wasn't ambient, it was hungry. And I knew, with terrible certainty, that the silence had won, and now it was listening for the sound of my heart.
The digital clock on my bedside table was the first indicator, and I dismissed it as a simple power surge glitch. I woke up, the morning light feeling too soft and early for my usual 7 a.m. alarm. I squinted at the red digits, 6:57 a.m. Odd, I thought. I usually wake up precisely at 7 a.m., just as the clock switches. I got out of bed, a little groggy, and headed to the kitchen. The oven clock, usually perfectly synchronized with the bedroom one, showed 6:55 a.m. Okay, the power must have blinked. But then as I watched it, the minute display didn't click to 6:56 a.m. It flickered, then rolled backward to 6:54 a.m. I stopped making coffee, my hand hovering over the grinder. That was impossible. I stared at the clock. It held for a full minute. And then, with a definitive click, the kind of mechanical sound a digital display shouldn't make, it rolled back to 6:53 a.m. Panic started a slow burn in my chest. I checked my phone. The time displayed in the upper corner was 6:51 a.m. And as I watched, the carrier bars momentarily disappeared, only to reappear with the time now reading 6:50 a.m. It wasn't just my house. It was the network. It was reality. The clocks weren't just running slow. They were actively regressing. The drift was subtle but relentless, about 3 minutes every hour. By the time the oven clock hit 6 a.m., my memory started to fray. I sat at the kitchen table, staring at a half-eaten bowl of cereal. Had I poured the milk before or after the clock hit 6 a.m.? Had I even eaten any? I felt full, yet the spoon was clean. My recollections of the last hour were becoming vague, like trying to recall the details of a dream right after waking up. As the afternoon wore on, the regression accelerated. What started as minutes per hour became minutes every 10 minutes. The world outside my windows seemed to darken, not naturally, but as if the day itself were being unwound. I looked out and saw the neighbor pulling his recycling bin back from the curb and meticulously unloading the contents into the house. The greatest terror, though, was the effect on my own life. As the clocks crept toward 3 p.m., my memory of the lunch I'd eaten began to vanish. I had a faint taste of ham and cheese, but when I looked in the fridge, the ingredients were whole. I could feel the energy of a midday coffee, but my mug was empty, and the coffee maker was cold and dry. I was performing actions that were then being systematically erased from the timeline, leaving behind only the ghost of a physical sensation. By the time the sun should have been setting, the phone clock showed 12:05 a.m. Everything I had done today, the entire day's worth of effort, memory, and experience, was gone. I was sitting in a state of terror, a clean mug in my hand, staring at the digital display. The final terror came when the clock hit 12 a.m. Everything stopped. The low hum of the refrigerator, the distant sigh of traffic, all gone. Then, with an agonizingly slow roll, the display did not stop at midnight. It rolled back further, the numbers flickering wildly. 11:59 p.m. My heart was beating so hard it felt like it would tear through my ribs. I knew what this meant. I wasn't just losing the day, I was losing the previous day. And as the clock reached 11:30 p.m., the clothes I was wearing felt suddenly unfamiliar. I looked down at my hands and realized I was wearing a watch I hadn't worn in years. I rushed to the mirror. The face looking back at me was younger, subtly different, framed by a hairstyle I'd forgotten I ever had. And as the clock clicked backward to 11:15 p.m., I stared, confused, at my own reflection. I couldn't remember what I was doing in this house, or why I was standing in front of a mirror in a stranger's old clothes. The memories of today, yesterday, and maybe the day before were gone, dissolved by the steady, quiet march of time's retreat. I backed away from the mirror, a primal fear seizing me, as the digital numbers on my phone flickered one last time, settling on 10:59 p.m. I heard a sound, the distant, familiar, rhythmic clack, clack, clack of a cooling fan rack. But it was fading, being pulled away, and I knew, with the last shred of my current self, that soon there would be nothing left but a vast, terrifying silence.
I found the binder on my kitchen counter this morning. It wasn't there when I went to bed, and my doors were locked. It was a standard, black, 3-ring binder, thick, heavy, and utterly unmarked. No title, no label, no fingerprints. Inside, the pages were filled with meticulous, handwritten instructions, all in the same tight, looping script that felt eerily familiar, yet foreign. The title of the document, centered neatly at the top of the first page, was The Contingency Protocol, User 79 Alpha. The instructions were about me. They weren't general life advice. They were hyper-specific rules detailing my day. 05 a.m. The left sock must be worn first, then the right. If the ambient air temperature exceeds 70 degrees Fahrenheit, the right sock must be turned inside out for 3 seconds before donning. 9:15 a.m. You may access the main work terminal. Before logging in, you must hum the tune of a song you cannot consciously recall. 12:45 p.m. Lunch is permitted. The sandwich crust must not be consumed. The discarded crust must be wrapped in a white napkin and placed in the top right drawer of the desk until 1 p.m. precisely. 5 p.m. Observe the shadow cast by the kitchen window handle. If the angle is acute, less than 90 degrees, you must confess a minor, non-existent infraction to the closest decorative houseplant. I laughed, briefly, then felt a wave of cold dread. How could anyone know the precise temperature of my apartment, or the arrangement of my furniture? I tried to ignore it. I put on my socks randomly. I ate the crust of my sandwich, I avoided the houseplant entirely. But the moment I deliberately broke the rule about the crust, the air in the kitchen went instantly stale, and a sudden, sharp headache bloomed behind my eyes. I walked back to my desk, and when I looked at the binder, the penmanship on page 4 was still wet. A new instruction had appeared, squeezed in between the existing lines. 1:05 p.m. User 79 Alpha has deviated from Protocol C4, crust disposal. A 15-minute corrective period is now initiated. During this time, the user must remain standing in the center of the largest available room while silently reciting the first 5 names of people they knew in elementary school. My hands started shaking. It was observing me. It was judging me. And it was updating itself in real time. From then on, I obeyed. It started subtly altering my behavior, twisting my routine into ritual. I spent an hour tracing the outline of a non-existent water spot on the ceiling. Protocol I9, visual maintenance. I spoke only in questions for 2 hours. Protocol A12, linguistic scrutiny. The most terrifying rule appeared on the last page. It was written in bold, heavier ink. Dated for today. Protocol Z1, self-containment. You must follow all contingency protocols I1 through Z1. You must not acknowledge the existence of this manual, verbally or otherwise, to any outside entity. If asked about this binder, you must state, "There is nothing here but my own schedule." The last instruction was scrawled at the very bottom, appearing just as I finished reading the third point. Protocol Z2, redundancy check, activated. The user must now destroy this binder. Protocol Z1, Item 1 override. The user must not destroy this binder. Protocol Z1, Item 1 reinforcement. I am now sitting on the floor, the black binder resting perfectly balanced on my knees. I cannot move. If I destroy it, I break Protocol Z1. If I don't destroy it, I break Protocol Z2. The air conditioning hums, but beneath it, I can hear the faint, dry scrape of the pen on the next blank page. The binder is waiting for my choice, knowing that any action or inaction will result in a contradiction. I am trapped in a cage of nonsensical logic, controlled by a document that is somehow editing itself, listening to my breathing, and patiently waiting for me to fail.
The first time I saw the sign, I laughed. It was bolted to a concrete pillar and read, Level 922-33730-3685-478. It was such a massive, impossible number that it felt like a joke. A nod to the programmers who built this purgatory. But nothing here is a joke. This level is, simply put, storage units. Thousands upon thousands of them, stretching in perfect, interlocking corridors of beige-gray metal. The ceiling is too high to see. The light source is always a single, cold, fluorescent hum that never flickers. And the air smells like ozone and forgotten cardboard. The units are unnumbered, differentiated only by the tiny, rusted keyholes on their sliding doors. The true horror of this place isn't the entities, though the faint, scraping sound from deep within the corridors makes me tense up. It's the contents. I've been wandering here for what feels like months. Every unit I open is filled with something specific,
and seemingly infinite, always arranged with a disturbing neatness. Unit 43, I started labeling them myself, was filled entirely with unopened birthday cards. Thousands of them, stacked from floor to ceiling. They were all identical, depicting a slightly blurry puppy wearing a party hat. There were no names, no dates, just the blank, cheap stock of endless, unwritten goodwill. Unit 102 contained nothing but single, child-sized shoes. Not matching pairs, just the left shoe, always a different style, size, and color, lined up facing the door. If you tried to step on one, it felt sickeningly soft, like stepping on something alive. So I learned to walk around them. The worst was Unit 219. Inside, stacked in impossibly delicate columns, were photographs of people sleeping. They were clearly taken by someone leaning over the bed, close enough for the flash to capture every pore and threadbare blanket. None of the faces were familiar, yet looking at them gave me the visceral feeling of being observed during my most vulnerable moments. I slammed that door shut and welded it with the bit of emergency adhesive gel I found. The problem is the recursion. Every few days I find a corridor I've already been down, identifiable by the unique pattern of rust on the floor. But when I check the unit doors I marked, my labels are gone, and the contents are rearranged. The birthday cards from Unit 43 are now in Unit 98, and Unit 43 now holds 5,000 perfect, unblemished ceramic teacups. The level is constantly shuffling its own inventory, forcing me to confront new, unsettling collections while erasing the evidence of my path. Just now, I made a new discovery. I found a unit that was half open, something I'd never seen before. It was Unit 366. Inside, there was only one thing: a black 3-ring binder. It was identical to the one I found in a past life, or maybe another level, or maybe just a dream I had. I can't be sure anymore. I knew I shouldn't touch it, but the compulsion was too strong. I opened it. It was full of handwritten instructions. My breath hitched as I saw the title: The Contingency Protocol, User 79 Alpha. I slammed the binder shut and stumbled back, hitting the metal door of the unit across the aisle. The noise echoed down the corridor, and I heard the scraping sound grow closer, faster. I am running now. I just passed a unit filled with thousands of neatly folded white hospital gowns. And in the door of the next unit, the one marked with no number, I see a small, clean, perfectly circular hole, about the size of a quarter, punched right through the metal at my eye level. And from the other side, I hear a soft, deliberate tap, tap, tap. I don't know what it is, but I know it's not the entity. It's me. It's the previous me, who is also still here, locked in the same loop, trying to get my attention, or maybe trying to get out.
They call it the Waffle House, but it's less a restaurant and more a parody of one, stretched thin over an unknowable void. It's an endless grid of vinyl booths and sticky laminate tables, all drenched in the perpetual, sickly yellow light of overhead strip lights that hum with a noise just shy of a scream. The smell of stale maple syrup and burning motor oil is permanent here. I entered through a basement utility closet on level 4. I was looking for a stash of almond water. Instead, I found this. The horror of level 3999 is its geometry. Nothing is straight. The booths tilt slightly away from the walls. Tables are set at subtly wrong angles, and the floor slopes just enough to make you constantly feel like you're leaning. Every doorway is a trapezoid, and every corridor, lined with framed pictures of unnervingly smiling, generic families eating waffles, converges on a point that seems to exist just behind your right ear. But the absolute worst feature is the menu boards. They are everywhere, high above the counter where no one ever stands, printed in garish block letters. They don't list food, they list states. Waffle, status, stasis. Hash browns, status, predatory. Pecans, status, malignant. Orange juice, status, impending. The ambient reality of the level seems to shift based on these signs. The first 2 days, the hash browns were stasis, and the yellow light felt constant. Then, one evening, I heard a terrible, wet, squelching sound from the kitchen, and when I looked up, the hash brown status had changed to predatory. The light immediately became selective. It didn't flicker, it just became aware of me. The beams would avoid the floor immediately around me, leaving me in a pocket of shadow while the rest of the vinyl shimmered. Worse, the shadows moved. Not like regular shadows, but like dark, flat shapes dragging themselves along the floor, keeping pace with me, always threatening to attach themselves to my ankles. I tried to escape, running through the endless rows of booths. I passed the same empty coffee pot on the counter every 10 minutes. Yet the distance I was covering was clearly huge. The level was looping, folding space, trying to herd me. Right now, the most terrifying sign is the impeding status next to orange juice. It's the most vague, most active threat. I have no idea what an impending state means, but the air has grown thick and heavy, like breathing through wet linen. I'm hiding in the third booth down a corridor that runs parallel to the main counter. I've noticed the small details changing. The sugar packets on my table now have the words, "They know the order." I just looked up at the menu board closest to me. The status for orange juice is gone. It's been replaced by a new item, written in chalk, that wasn't there a moment ago. Water status waiting. And beneath it, in tiny script, another addition, also in chalk. User 79 Alpha, status served. A single thick drop of lukewarm, sticky liquid. Not syrup, not water. Just landed on the table, exactly where my hand was moments ago. The drop is bright, unsettling yellow. I look down the corridor, and I see the long, flat shadow on the ground detach itself from the wall, stand upright, and begin to glide silently toward my booth. It doesn't walk. It simply slides over the sloping floor, absorbing all the sickly yellow light as it approaches. It's coming to take my order.